we can work together against the real enemies of us all. Poverty, lack of education, lack of food and clean water, lack of decent health care, lack of simple human dignity. And yes, we cannot honor Dr. King and not acknowledge his stinging indictment of war. Follow the way of love, not the way of violence, the man of peace declared. It is not violence or non-violence. It is non-violence or non-existence. Dr. King always reminds us that we should raise our voices on behalf of those who are voiceless in the face of the large armies of the world, people who are poor, people who are destitute, yearn for a voice of justice, and ours must be that voice. Let the new American optimism be an optimism grounded in internationalism, not in narrow jingoistic nationalism. To our own demise, we have allowed the spirit of Wall Street to establish the morality of the nation. And that has led us to this distressing place, the debasing of the moral currency of the country. This is a debasement that brought us to the brink of more than economic bankruptcy. And I want to close. The notion of separating business, and for that matter politics, from the notion of care and concern for people, and the environmental resources that make such businesses possible, have led us to where we are today. We need a new ethic of care. We need a new social contract between the governed and the governors. And here, we might turn to Dr. King, who suggests that we may find a way to link love and power in the service of justice. Power without love, he says, is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. If the new Obama administration is in any way responsive to Dr. King's dream, it will have as a priority shifting the way that wealth and income are distributed in this nation. And there are political avenues to do this. A different tax policy, a policy of living wages, a policy of public support for quality public education, a policy of universal health care. Simple places to start. America, the world is waiting again. It has waited before, most recently after 9/11, grieving with the nation in an unprecedented expression of solidarity. The world condemned the murderous attacks and waited. They waited for the response of the proud and powerful nation wounded by this brutal assault. They waited, and many of us hoped that this giant of a nation would provide the world with a new model of grace under pressure, with a measured response that would move us beyond an eye for an eye and mutual destruction. They waited. They still wait. And again, they wait. Perhaps new century can begin. Perhaps a new American century can begin. A century marked not by military might, but by a motif of moral care. A century marked not by exclusion, but by inclusion. A century marked not by intolerance or indifference, but by tolerance for celebration of and the embrace of difference. A new century, marked not so much in stark contrasts of black and white, good and evil, us and them, where we always have clarity about who is good and who is pathologically evil. But a new century, where we can acknowledge that we can be mature enough to accept that as human beings with feet of clay, we live our lives in shades of gray. Flawed as we are, we can hardly do better than Dr. King in his declaration. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody, if I can show somebody, it is part of the cycle of life. We all must pass along. While in India, right after Gandhi's death, Dr. King made reference to Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, who, upon Abraham Lincoln's death, said, "He belonged to us. Now he belongs to the ages." Gandhi, too, belongs to the ages. Dr. King, sadly, April 4, 1968, was ushered into the arms of the ages by an assassin's bullet. You and I make our way through this life. When it comes to a time for an assessment of your life, will there be someone who can say of you, "You belong to the ages"? I end with Langston Hughes. Just an excerpt from what is an unbelievable declaration made in 1936. He says, "Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America, America again. This is our moment. Let's make it one that belongs to the ages."